Terence Crawford. Well, here's the thing. Terence Crawford can say what he want to say. I mean, this man's accomplished in this sport. He's done the things he needed to do. But here's the thing. When you decide to speak on something, man, make sure you got all your ducks in a row, especially when you're speaking about the argument, the other guy who's arguably number one pound for pound. What's up, sports fans? It's your man D back, Speak Your Mind Sports Talk. All right, man, we're talking about Terence Crawford. Maybe Terence Crawford just should shut the up and go fight Vergil Ortiz or do something. Because if it ain't Vergil, if it ain't Spence, if it ain't Manny or Porter, then who's next, Crawford? That's the question. Now, see, Terence Crawford just did an interview here recently. I'm going to play some of that footage for you guys so that you can hear some of the things that Crawford has to say about the Errol Spence fight. Certain things he had to say considering Vergil Ortiz. But we're going to talk about all of that, all rounded up in one, so that I don't have to keep putting out videos about Terence Crawford, because it's a lot of touchy Terence Crawford fans out there that feel like, oh, it's just Terence Crawford hate. Whatever, man. You guys got to hold Terence Crawford accountable sometime for some of the foolishness. And right now, he's on quite a bit of it. So I will say this with Terence Crawford. Look, man, he's saying that they're working on the Pacquiao fight. Well, at least this is what he led us to believe, that they're working on the Pacquiao fight. So take a listen.
All right, well, Shawn Porter tweeted something and he added you. He said, listen, I'll be ready for May. And then you said something about, just stand by. You're trying me. What did you mean by that?
I just told him to stand by, you know what I mean? I've been seeing the little slick stuff that Shawn been saying here lately, I'll be watching. So I just told him to stand by, because if the fight that we working on don't go through, then for sure
and that's Pacquiao, you mean?
For sure. If that fight, don't go through, then for sure we'll visit that fight, and then, we can get it on.
How close are you guys to making that Pacquiao fight happen? And if it is close, is it going to be somewhere in Saudi Arabia like Bobby alluded to some time back?
We'll have to see, man. I don't know too much details. We'll have to see.
Now, if this doesn't happen, if this doesn't go through, then he said, okay, he'll visit the Shawn Porter situation. Now, these are words that we can hold Bud accountable for, hopefully in the future here, because it appears to me the last articles I read or any information that I received was that Pacquiao was working on Mikey Garcia. So Crawford says that they're working on Pacquiao. Could still be, because $50 million is probably more than the zone can offer. And the guys in Qatar or Saudi out there, they're offering a $50 million site fee. So, still could be possible that fight happens. Outside of that, he told Porter to stand by. So, not saying that Porter's off the table. But if it's not Porter, if it's not Pacquiao, then why not Vergil? Because the last thing that we want to see as fans is some silly fight. Some silly fight that we know you're going to beat this guy up quite easily. That's not what we want as fans of boxing. And so, this is what he's saying about Porter and Pacquiao. And, we got to take it for face value, man. I'm going to have to take Crawford for what he says on this. But moving on to Canelo comments about, avoiding the black fighters. And again, it's not a big deal. It's not a huge deal to what he said. By the way, Canelo's moved, right? And the fact that he's only fought Lara and Jacobs, Austin Trout, I guess. Okay. It's not like he has a plethora of black fighters on his resume. So Canelo fans can get angry with that comment. My thing with Terence Crawford is when we're talking about resumes and who a guy is fighting, and it's arguably the other guy, pound for pound, maybe you're not the one that should be making the comments. That's my thing with Terence Crawford. Maybe you're not the guy. because your resume is suspect as well, Crawford. And that's the thing. When we start talking about resumes, you know, Victor Postile, Yuriorkis Gamboa, those are your two biggest wins, man. Because when you fought Yuriorkis Gamboa, he was in his prime. He was that vicious fighter. He was actually a bit quicker than you, which is why he was able to hurt Crawford. And then Victor Postile, it took him to 12, you know. So, look, it's easy to say that your resume is quite questionable as well. So when you talk about who a guy's fighting or who he may avoid, that's just not something that should come from Terence Crawford. It should come from somewhere else. Terence Crawford, you got enough things to cover for yourself. And these recent comments about Vergil Ortiz and Manny Pacquiao and Shawn Porter in this situation, and let's talk about Vergil Ortiz, just to touch on that, guys. Listen, if you saying this guy has a lot of holes and, you know, that you'll exploit, brother, if it's not Keith Thurman, Shawn Porter, Manny Pacquiao, or Errol Spence, then you should be fighting Vergil Ortiz next. Go exploit them. If the kid wants to fight, don't worry about him being too young, letting him build. See, this is the nonsense that has to be held. All of these guys have to, you are a champion. So whoever they decide to put in front of you, get the job done. If they're putting this kid in front of you too early, let them worry about that. You don't speak on that. I know, like, a lot of Bud Crawford fans feel like he's the big bad Bud and he can say what he want to say. That doesn't mean we have to agree with it. If you're not going to fight Manny, which it doesn't seem hopeful, but you said that there's a chance, so there'll still be a chance. If you're not going to fight Manny, you said you'll visit Shawn Porter. So if you visit Shawn Porter, boom, you get that fight. Boom, no complaints. Anybody that has a complaint about that, that's idiotic, because Shawn Porter and Bud Crawford is a fight that I would want to see, and I think that that's more of a valid fight than a Vergil Ortiz. That's more validity for Terence Crawford at welterweight. I mean, look, Vergil Ortiz is a good fighter coming up, and people may assume that he'll beat Shawn Porter. I don't think anybody's putting him over Crawford. If so, that's kind of tough. I wouldn't really put him over Crawford. I say give Crawford some troubles, but Crawford will beat him. However, there may be some people putting Vergil over Shawn Porter, but Shawn Porter's proven it, and Vergil hasn't. So Shawn Porter's a much better fight concerning validity for Terence Crawford than, you know, Vergil Ortiz. So totally acceptable. Manny Pacquiao, totally acceptable. Even before Spence, I would accept him fighting Manny Pacquiao. Ain't nobody's going to complain or gripe about him fighting Manny Pacquiao. Spence fight, forget about it. There's no need for us to talk about that. So those are the three guys. What if Bob doesn't want to pay the money to Shawn Porter, or the Manny Pacquiao fight doesn't work out? If this is the scenario, if this is the case, Terence Crawford, that means you should be going to exploit, as you said, exploit Vergil Ortiz, because that, in my opinion, is the next best fight. But we have to see how these things play out, you know.
But honestly, I seen Maurice hurting Vergil. You know what I mean? When you look at Vergil after the fight, he's all busted up and stuff. And granted, the little kid is, you know what I mean, he's talented. But, you know what I mean, I seen a lot of holes in his game that if me and him was to fight, it'd be exploited.
Terence Crawford made some comments about Errol Spence. We'll talk about that on another video. But this video really had to do with Canelo, and I wanted to bring up that Vergil Ortiz situation. But Terence Crawford's not the guy to be talking about who Canelo's fighting. Bro, you still have to worry about how Bob Arum's going to get you into a valid fight. Who are you fighting? Don't worry about who Canelo's fighting, Crawford. Who are you fighting? Because that's still a question that needs to be answered. You know, a broken down, beat down Kell Brook is not enough. Okay, scary Amir Khan, Gimp Leg Benavidez, and we talk about Vergil Ortiz. What made Mean Machine any more valid of an opponent than Vergil Ortiz, right? So, brother, you still have to step it up some as well before, look, like as the old adage go, don't throw stones if you're living in a glass house. Just that simple. Don't throw stones if you're living in a glass house, man. Come on, let's be real about this. There's nothing to get all bent out of shape about. He can say what he want to say concerning Canelo, but maybe that's just thoughts that you should keep to yourself, since your resume ain't the best, since you're not fighting the best guys, regardless of the circumstances. You're not getting in there with the best. I mean, Jeff Horn was the champion that you beat, so what, is he one of your best fight? Victor Post style Jeff Horn and Uriokis Gamboa, is that something to scream about? Am I being unfair? Is that not Terence Crawford's best fight? Jeff Horn, Victor Postol, and Uriokis Gamboa. Those are literally his best fights. So, speaking on another guy's resume or who he's fought, if I'm not mistaken, he got in the ring with Floyd Mayweather. Could be the reason he lost, because he fought an elite fighter. Bud Crawford. Did you fight an elite fighter? Don't think so. So, just wanted to clear that up, man. Maybe you're not the guy to be talking about who Canelo is fighting or why or anything. Some things you should just keep to yourself. And y'all know how I always end this thing. For the love of sports, let's talk about it. Peace.